Hello, good morning. It is the morning for me. I just a couple days ago finished rereading The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley D Jackson. And I constantly recommend this book to people and talk to people about it. Actually, why I reread it was I mentioned it to someone and I was talking to them about it and they didn't know anything about it. And I wish I had someone to talk to about it. So here I am. I'm going to make an effort to not spoil the very end of the book because I feel like that's important. But otherwise, this is really more for people who have read the book. And another thing is that I didn't want to reread books this year, which I think that's I'm under spells. That's the internet book people getting to me. That's the Goodreads mindset that rereads don't count or whatever. But just in general, it's nice to experience new things. And I'm sure there are books out there that I will enjoy and I just need to read them. But I was finding it so difficult to find a book to read. And I was kind of putting pressure on myself to read a book. So, because I was having that conversation with someone about the book, I decided to just read it, whatever. But anyway, I was never a huge, rereader or rewatcher of anything before, COVID-19 became a reality. Prior to that, I had no interest in going back to, well, not no interest, because there are definitely shows and movies and stuff that I would rewatch, but I wouldn't say I had a comfort movie or show or book or anything like that I was consistently going back to the way that now I feel or in the past, more recently in the past 5 years, I had developed more comfort shows or or books that I could reread 3 or 4 times a year. Shout out Neverending Story, which I am literally currently reading. I weirdly applied a sense of guilt to myself for reading this book, and it was unwarranted because it's a masterpiece. I don't know Shirley Jackson's other books, and I kind of wonder if I should read any of them. If you have recommendations, put in comments. But anyway, like I was saying, I really like prose, and Shirley Jackson's prose is so masterful. The thing that was striking me about the book and about Eleanor's POV was it's so dreamy and it's so easy to get lost in. Eleanor gets very lost in things. And the word that was coming to my mind, or the thought that was coming to me as I was reading or listening, I was listening to the audiobook, is that her mind is very porous. She sets off on her adventure and everything she sees becomes part of a personal mythos and fairy tale. She's lived so much of her life in her imagination. And I think the prose really draws you into that. It can be, I feel if you're a really daydreamy or dissociative person, it could take you a much longer time to read the book because it just sucks. It just hypnotizes you into Eleanor's POV or her mindset. As a main character, she's very easy to love because she's a little bit pathetic, and I feel bad ascribing that to her because patheticness is a quality that when I think of patheticness in fictional characters, I think of almost antagonistic characters who are able to garner a lot of empathy or sympathy from the reader. For a main character, it's a little bit harder to get people to like them when they're pathetic. But the thing with Eleanor is that she is perspective, she is like creating change in her life in a way by accepting the like call to adventure. And she has like a zeal and like an excitement. What she resents in herself is like passiveness, reclusiveness, and shyness. And those are things that she was forced into because of the way that she ended up living her life isolated and as a caretaker for her mother. Her as the younger sister, as the caretaker, and as kind of like the family doormat, was reminding me of. I cut out mention of it in previous videos, but I rewatched actually the movie Now Voyager, because I watched it in a like feminism and film class when I was in college. And in that movie, the main character, she is a like unwanted last born child and is the like de facto caretaker and like family doormat. And she's also ultimately a tragic figure, actually, but in a trifling way. That movie, it's a good movie, but it's whack. The situation is whack. And it's a little devastating to me personally. But anyway, in her introduction, it says Eleanor had become shy without ever meaning to. And that like level of resentment, or like her pining for the type of person she could have been and the type of life she could have lived. Her feeling of not living her life is very captivating to me. And then there's Theodora as her foil. The tension that comes from her seeing Theodora as the woman who she wants to be, and their first meeting, them being immediately close, and Eleanor seeking love and affection and attention from Theodora while also wanting to be like her. And then when the other characters come into play, Dr. Montague and Luke, her growing resentment at seeing someone who has the things that she doesn't have and that she can't have, and how easy it is for her to connect with people when Eleanor feels so isolated. Her isolation actually was also reminding me of the biologist in Annihilation. And I feel like that is also a POV character where you can just kind of get lost in like their rhythm and just like zone out for a little bit. But that book has a lot of action to kind of anchor things down. Every time I read Annihilation, by the way, I get nightmares, but I get them like days after. I also recently watched My Neighbor Totoro for the first time since I was very young. And the cat pus was really giving me Annihilation vibes. Like it was making me very unsettled. I wasn't buying into the whimsy, unfortunately. But Luke in particular coming into the picture, and this like love triangle that forms, the journey's end and lover's meeting of it all, is Luke really to me is just an amplifier for the feelings or the tension between Eleanor and Theodora, because it's about who he chooses, whose side he chooses to be on, who he is drawn closer to. Because Eleanor doesn't like Luke. Not romantically, it doesn't seem like. When they spend time alone together, she only really has contempt for him. And that's also the house. Things like Luke and Theodora making jokes at her expense, or making jokes about like, oh, being in love, or hiding away from her so that they can talk alone. In her mind, seeing her as weak, those serve to isolate Eleanor. Like, I don't feel truly that it's a love triangle. There's one scene that's like some chat about like Theodora and Luke like being a little bit romantic. And I was like, They all have like a playful chemistry together. The four of them, including Dr. Montague. I never felt deeply a romantic chemistry. It's It's like an example of Eleanor's separateness or the things that she doesn't get to experience. Because when she has her moment or her like chance to seduce or to be seduced, she's like repulsed by it. The real seduction for Eleanor is the house and the like entities that haunt her or that she carries in a way, because her backstory is she at 12 her family experienced like poltergeist activity. The like paranormal research understanding of a poltergeist is that people are the catalyst or provide the energy for these paranormal events that happen. They almost live inside of you. So Hill House has a reputation for being haunted or for being a place where there's an explosion of this activity. But when Eleanor enters the house, the activity it's moving through Eleanor. That's what we experience because we are in Eleanor's point of view, but it's also what we don't experience because there are scenes and there are moments that say to the reader, Eleanor doesn't know what just happened here because everyone else witnessed her say or do something that she was not conscious of. And that also further isolates her. So the only connection she can have, or the deepest connection she can have after feeling betrayed by everyone who's around her, is with the house. That's her journey's end and lovers meeting. Her becoming more separate and being, as she is, she's not unstable, but she's inexperienced. And she's a little emotionally weaker. Also with the recent separation from her mother, that being her primary social connection, and the lack of connection and support that she has from her sister and her sister's family. I was thinking of in Hereditary when they say the person who is possessed is the weakest person in the room. It felt like from the beginning, Eleanor was always the weakest person in the room. With that being the case, Eleanor, she's not the most reliable narrator at a certain point, especially in like the back half after the stuff starts to happen. The thing she described about Theodora, or the like arguments that they have, I wonder kind of how much is correct perception, because Eleanor is pretty astute. She takes everything in bad faith after a certain point. There's one fight that they do have, and it's kind of about Luke, that it's so vague and strange that I don't know what's going on between the three of them, or like when did this rivalry come about? And it could also be that Theodora is being influenced, because the reason that all of them, well, the two of them, Luke's just there, the reason the two of them are in the house is because they are sensitive to supernatural occurrences. Like, that's the whole thing. So it could be that in Theodora's point of view, she's also being like influenced to dislike something in Eleanor, or to take her in bad faith. But Theodora as a character, I love her a lot. She's so like vivacious and like glamorous. From the brief descriptions of her life and the things she does, she seems to be like a really aspirational person. She runs this cute little shop full of like adorable, wonderful things that you can fill up your house with, antique furniture. She has a gorgeous apartment. She comes and goes anywhere as she pleases. I imagined her just as like radiant, a very like worldly, like well-traveled, like stunning person. She's described a lot as selfish, which she does seem to be. But that's how you have to be that like archetype of person. But at the same time, she seems to be very caring of others. So I wonder what's going on in her head. Luke is pretty boring to me. There's not much provided about him. He's just there. Like, I really think he's just a tool for the narrative. And Dr. Montague is always put up as this like paternal, like fatherly figure above them. And they're his little students and his like little children. In a way, that dynamic of course he's the expert, like that's what he brought them there to be. Like he's leading this whole experience at Hill House. But that dynamic that they have with him, as they like do what he says, or he's the authority, it doesn't serve them ultimately. The whole family like dynamic thing seems to be fraught for all of them. Dr. Montague says his life is fine, so I'll trust him that he loves his wife. Even though she causes problems. But you know what? She did prove herself to have sense in other ways. I think it's easy to be really annoyed with Mrs. Montague when she comes into the picture. But she had some sense. Just not about paranormal stuff. And she's a little rude and a little like flippant. There's a point where I warmed up to her. But Luke seems to be like the sent away boy, like the problem child in his family. Like, well, he says he didn't have a mom, so he doesn't have connection to his mother. He was raised by like aunts, or maybe just one aunt, who thinks he's a problem constantly. Theodora talks about like growing up, spending her school vacations at her boarding school, that like on the empty campus. And then obviously Eleanor's background is shared in more detail. How her sister is the one person on earth that she hates, and she dislikes her brother-in-law and she dislikes her niece, and they like take advantage of her and take her for granted. There's a certain like weariness that comes with caregiving, but I get the impression that before she was her mother's caregiver, that her mother was overbearing and oppressive. Especially from like the nail polish thing, and then also her buying pants secretly. But then also the pants are her self-actualizing, like that's her taking the power back. Her buying those at the beginning of her journey to start her new life. So when they're all kind of like playing house together, they're presenting it like, oh, we're having so much fun together, we get on together so well, we're like family. They all have a seemingly like fraught relationship or like idea of family dynamics. And I just now realize, share a sense of abandonment. So the betrayal in like Theodora and Luke ganging up together, or seemingly ganging up together, it feels like in one way the popular kids bullying this like weaker kid. And it feels like in another way the bullied kids turning to pick on the weaker kid so they don't get bullied. Or at least that's how I'm thinking about it now. How, if I could put myself into their POVs, if I could imagine how their experience is, Luke being this like thrown away, being this thrown away child. And I guess Theodora being the same. Her whole situation, she's very like mystified in a way. And I think this is also why Eleanor like deifies her. She goes by just Theodora, no surname. So that is in itself like her cutting ties with family. She seems to come from nowhere and no one and just be totally an individual. So her isolation, but her isolation with a sense of power, compared to Eleanor's isolation and her isolation in lack of power and in like disenfranchisement. Those are the thoughts that were coming to me as I was reading and like thinking about this book. Again, it is really a masterpiece, and I'm glad that I reread it and didn't stay too in my head about not rereading it. And maybe I'll reread some more books, but I just got a new book in from my holds, so something new to experience is always good too. All right, that's going to be it for me. If you like the video, If you have something to say, comment in the comments. Tell me your theories or your analysis on these characters if you've read this book. If you'd like to see more of me, you can subscribe. If you don't, that's cool. But thanks for watching this video all the way through. I really appreciate it. And goodbye.